Hey guys, in today's video I am sharing an endgame study. This one by Leonid Kubbel, who was a famous endgame composer from the early 20th century, and this is from 1929. And it's white to play and move. So like we've done in our previous endgame study and tactics series, go ahead and pause it, and I would say give yourself 15-20 minutes. See if you could come up with the solution, write down your answers, and then check back and compare it to my solution. Okay, let's take a look. Now, I'm going to kind of go through it sort of using the thought process that I came up with to come up with the solution. So hopefully you find that helpful. But we see the general threat here is this D pawn is looking to promote after a knight move. And two candidate moves should come to mind fairly quickly. One is rook to h2, attacking the d pawn, and one would be either bishop to a5 or bishop to a4, threatening the d pawn. So let's just take a quick look at those. If you were to play rook to h2, then the problem there is that your opponent can block you with knight to f2. And of course, if you take, then black will promote. Okay? And we have a similar problem if we try to go with the bishop. Bishop to a5, and then we have knight to c3. And bishop to f4, we have knight to e3. And so we need to look for another solution. Now, we do see that we do have some other pieces on the board, and so that's where we should start. Typically, I find it important to usually start with the most forcing moves to see if we can find any traction there. Obviously, if we don't see any immediate solutions. So let's take a look. Of course, we have rook. Go back to the beginning position here, and the only check we have in this position is knight to h7 check. Okay, and now let's take a look here. Our opponent can go in 4 different squares, of course, e8 and e6 and f8 and f6. And so here, let's take a look at the f file, because this is actually very interesting. Let's say he goes to f6, and then actually we have an interesting solution at that point. We have here rook to h2, and now the problem is if black tries to block, then we can take with check, and then we're going to be able to win this pawn and eventually win all of the pawns to win the game. Okay, and that is also the case if we go to f8. So now black is forced to either go to e8 or e6. So let's take a look at those. Now, if he goes to e6, here we have, we can look at rook to h8 check and see if anything comes of that. Of course, we already know if he goes to the f file that we just go with rook to h2. So we should have that sort of in our minds already. So he's forced back to e7. And now we might notice that we actually have an additional check now with, of course, bishop to we have bishop to d6 check, which doesn't work, or we have well, because the black king will capture, or we have bishop to d8 check. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Bishop to d8 check. Again, we know if we go to the f file that we will be in trouble. If we go to e6, for example, then white can hit us with another check. Again, f file is off limits, and so we move here, for example, to e5. And then the problem here now is that we have this bishop to a5, and now the knight to c3 to block doesn't work because of this check here. Bishop to c3 check, and after the king moves, we take the pawn on e2. So let's go back. So after this, let's go here. After bishop to d8 check, black mainly has to go, or the only move left is to go to d6. And here we can look at another forcing move. Of course, we have these bishop checks that do nothing. And now here is where we combine what we learned earlier about our ways to capture this pawn, because that is our winning condition. And here we can do one more force move, rook to h6 check. Now here, there are only two squares that black can go to. And basically, whichever one he goes to, we are able to go the other way to capture the pawn with the bishop. So let's take a look here. We already saw this king to e5. Bishop can go to a5, and of course, knight to c3, bishop takes c3 check, and then we win the d pawn. And now, if he goes to c5, again, these are the only two squares he can go to, we can now attack the d pawn from g5. And of course, if the knight blocks, then we have this check, and of course, winning the d pawn. So let's take it from the beginning, just so you can see it all at once. So from this position, again, black is threatening to move his knight and then promote his pawn, which would not be winning for white. So we start off here with rook to h7 check. Okay. Of course, the king can move to e8, but the most trying move is moving to, e6, but the most trying move is to move to e8. Rook to h8 check. Okay, the king moves to e7, and then we have bishop to d8 check, and we discovered that the best move for the king is here to d6, or at least the most challenging move. And then after rook to h6 check, depending on which way, black has two choices. If king to e5 and bishop to a5, and if king to c5, then bishop to d5, and white will win the d pawn and the game. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Kubbel is one of the greatest endgame composers, and I really enjoyed that study, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. In the description below, I have an Amazon link to one of Kubbel's books that has 150 of his endgame studies, so you can check that out if you want. As you know, I believe endgame studies are very helpful to help you develop your thought process and your calculation skills. So check those out. Over here, I have a playlist to all of the endgame study videos that I've created, and so you can check that out as well. So I hope you guys are all doing well, and I will talk to you soon.